with no money down. Hurricane warnings have been extended along the South Carolina coastline, including Charleston, as Bonnie moves closer to land this morning. Welcome to Weather Center. I'm Cheryl Lemke. We'll have a closer look at the conditions across the country in a moment, but first, all eyes are on the East Coast as Bonnie continues its journey. A stream of traffic headed for safe ground Tuesday in North Carolina. Voluntary and then mandatory evacuations were ordered for many areas along the coast. For the complete details on Hurricane Bonnie, let's join Warren Madden in the Forecast Center.
Thanks very much, Cheryl. Dawn will be breaking on the coast of North Carolina here in the next couple of hours, and we'll find a coastline that is quiet and waiting the arrival of Hurricane Bonnie. We have seen the storm approaching the coast here over the overnight hours and could be making closer approaches as we go on into the day and towards noontime. As we take a look at the current position here, as of 2 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time from the National Hurricane Center, Bonnie centered 200 miles south-southwest of Cape Lookout, North Carolina, and we are looking at a fairly steady pattern as far as top winds and pressure, both fairly steady over the last about 12 hours or so. Now, the movement of the storm on the last advisory was to the northwest at 14 miles an hour, and because the hurricane was taking a little more westerly course than we had seen previously, the National Hurricane Center extended the hurricane warnings as of 2 a.m. down to Edisto Beach, South Carolina. That does take in the city of Charleston, and remember, a hurricane warning means that hurricane force winds could be in the warning area within the next 24 hours. As we take a look at the radar picture, we are looking at a very well-defined circulation here off the coast, and it is really pushing in a little closer to the coast as we've gone through the last couple of hours. Still not seeing a lot of rain right along the coast, but we are seeing some stronger, gustier winds. We've seen a gust up to 56 miles an hour reported around Wrightsville Beach around midnight, a little earlier. Now, speaking of Wrightsville Beach, we're going to go live now to Bill Keneally, who is stationed inland from Wrightsville Beach. Bill, what can you tell us what's happening out there now in southeastern North Carolina?
Warren, periodically I can feel a couple of raindrops actually catching a little interference here. I can hear some wind blowing pretty nicely outside. The wind is pretty much from the northeast, still gusting probably in the order of 30 to 40 miles per hour. And there is still some pretty decent amounts of rain trying to come down periodically. Although it's very ironic, Warren, I did see a couple stars out not 10 minutes ago. So speaking for the general public, it's been a rather restless night here in the greater Wilmington area. We've had a couple of power flickers. We've not lost any power as of yet. But once again, the wind is definitely becoming more and more of a factor. Looking behind me, I can still see the lights are on all across town. Again, there's not much traffic out there. That red blinking light is an indicator of Highway 74, I should say, and that area is the main route from Wrightsville Beach itself back towards the mainland, back towards the city of Wilmington, and traffic obviously is very, very light this morning. So just to reiterate what everybody's been saying from the emergency management offices, it's time to hunker down, folks. It's time to ride it out. If you're on the barrier islands, you're not going to get off anyhow. As of 11 p.m., as of 5 hours ago now, that traffic was restricted. So you will be there for the duration of Hurricane Bonnie. Hopefully, I did see a little bit of a jog more northbound over the last couple of hours, Warren. Maybe you can confirm that for me. Hopefully that is a sign this hurricane may eventually pass just to our east.
All right, well, thanks very much, Bill, and we'll be talking about that path here as we go forward here into this edition of Weather Center. Bill Keneally talking to us from near Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. Joining me right now here in the studio is Meteorology Supervisor Stu Ostro. And Stu, as Bill mentioned, we may be starting to see a little bit more of a northward turn out of the storm, and this certainly would be some good news instead of seeing it progress more westward.
That's right. We have been watching very closely on the satellite photos, as we'll see in a minute. And there does seem to be some indication of that. That is the turn that we've been expecting all along. if it's real. Now, what we're going to have to do over the next couple of hours is ascertain whether that's just a wobble or whether it's really a turn a bit more to the right, and we will also be relying on new updated information from the hurricane hunters.
Let's check out that satellite picture now. We can see over the last several hours that the eye has really developed quite well, and there's still a lot of strong convection around the eye.
We do see a well-organized hurricane in here. It is a Category 3 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson scale, and around the center of circulation, these deeper clouds which formed late in the evening have persisted and wrapped all the way around, and it's right under this area in here that the strongest winds are.
We can take a look though at that path though, and we do note on the last few images it does appear it is taking a bit more of a northward course as opposed to the northwest coast course that was in the 2 a.m. advisory.
We do see right over the last couple of images there a bit of a wobble to the right, more to the north, and that's what we were referring to a minute ago, and we'll have to see whether that continues over the next couple of hours.
And of course we'll be waiting expectantly for the next fix from the Hurricane Hunter aircraft, the next aircraft to go in to tell us exactly where the center is positioned, so we can see if we are starting to see that turn. Now, one thing we definitely want to let you know about is where the wind field is. This is a very large system, Category 3 storm, and the hurricane force winds extend in some cases 145 miles from the center of the storm, and tropical storm force winds are now scraping the coast, so this is definitely going to affect a large area coastline.
It will, and we've been studying the latest observations from the offshore buoys, and we do see information which confirms this. We have a large area of tropical storm force winds. The hurricane force winds are over a little smaller area. They're still offshore, but as we go through the daylight hours, through the morning hours, the winds will increase, the rains will increase along the coast, and conditions overall will worsen.
And as we look at those conditions, we will certainly be following them through the day as dawn breaks and we go into the day. We'll bring you up to date on what's happening. Stu, thanks very much for joining us here, and we will continue to cover the progress of Hurricane Bonnie as it approaches the coastline. The next advisory from the National Hurricane Center due out at 5 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, so we are certainly waiting for that in the next next hour or so, and we will be bringing that to you as soon as it arrives. If you have to be away from your TV, perhaps you're heading into work and you'd like to check on the progress of Hurricane Bonnie, if you have relatives or friends who live in the Carolinas, you can check out our website. Point your browser at weather.com. Let's find out what's happening now in the weather around the rest of the nation as we go into Wednesday morning. Here's Cheryl Lemke.
Well, as we get away from the effects of Hurricane Bonnie, much of the rest of the country actually not looking that bad on this Wednesday morning. Now, we've had a few showers and thunderstorms, though, popping up across the Intermountain West and the Southwest, and some of these thunderstorms have remained intact overnight. In fact, still some thunderstorms in progress around Dalhart, Texas, and they're streaming all the way over towards around Alamogordo in New Mexico. At the same time, too, a fairly strong cold front continues to sweep its way towards the east. And this morning, we've had some showers and thunderstorms popping up over parts of the eastern lakes and the northeastern corridor. In fact, it could be a very soggy morning commute for those of you across the northeast. Right now, we have...
Your coastal evacuation in South Carolina proves to be a smart move. This morning, your state is part of an extended hurricane warning. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Weather Center. I'm Bruce Edwards. Hurricane Bonnie's movement overnight forced the National Hurricane Center to expand the hurricane's projected target area. Now there appears to be a new change in direction. For the latest on Bonnie, let's go to Marshall Cease in the Forecast Center. Marshall?
Thanks, Bruce. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us here at the Weather Channel. All eyes on Hurricane Bonnie. Latest advisories in from the National Hurricane Center. Let's take a look first at the hurricane warnings. They were expanded to the south overnight to Edisto Beach, South Carolina, northward to Chincoteague, Virginia. Still have a watch as far south as Savannah, Georgia, and a watch north toward Cape Henlopen in Delaware. The current coordinates, center of circulation at 32.4 north, 77.6 west. It's about 130 miles south of Wilmington, North Carolina at this time. Winds 115 miles per hour. Moving north-northwest at 14, barometric pressure about 964 millibars. Now you can see that finally the rain bands are beginning to affect the coast around Wilmington southward toward the Myrtle Beach area, Horry County, and also Georgetown County, which were evacuated overnight. And you can also see the eye now becoming more discernible on the radar picture. and that's again about 130 miles away. But certainly the winds from this hurricane will be felt before the eye gets to the coast, many hours before. We'll take a look at that in just a moment. First, also want to show you the Carolina coastline, where the Weather Channel has folks positioned from the north coast to the south coast. We're going to take you right now to Wrightsville Beach, where Bill Keneally has been stationed all night. Bill, how are conditions changing there?
Marshall, unfortunately, they are now starting to deteriorate. I've donned the jacket here as the rain has started to pick up, and it's rather steady, and periodically the winds are very gusty. I'd put them on the order of 30 to 35 miles per hour, and maybe some higher gusts. A moment ago, we took a little ride down towards the barricade, which, by the way, is only about a half a mile to my right. That is the separation point between the barrier island and the mainland here. And over there, the police are telling us now they have heard that they have actually cut the power to the entire barrier island. That would be the entire city of Wrightsville Beach on the island side. This is on the mainland side. We still have power, thankfully. Also interesting to note, Marshall, they said they've counted as many as 20 cars over the last hour coming off of the barrier island. I think that is probably coincidental with the power getting cut, but 20 additional cars between the 4 and 5 o'clock hour exiting the island. Nobody's allowed back on the island, by the way. And Marshall, the other fear I see is now it looks as though the arrival of the eye wall will probably be coincidental with that high tide. The high tide about 10:30 in the morning here, so there will be a lot of high water. There will be very difficult negotiation as far as getting around, courtesy of the wind, and now also it looks like that tide will be a threat. And incidentally, as far as tidal water goes, that is within about a half a mile of us too. The Banks Channel and the Lee's Cut is the area that will be very susceptible to flooding with this rather incessant east wind.
Bill, thank you very much for that report, and bat down the hatches. We're just about 130 miles away from the center of that circulation. I'm here with Dr. Steve Lyons, who is the hurricane expert here at the Weather Channel. Dr. Lyons, the new coordinates came out a half an hour ago, and the new information from the Hurricane Center. Tell me, how has it changed since earlier?
It hasn't changed too much. Of course, they pulled the track a little bit to the south and to the south and west, and moved the hurricane warnings to the south. I think they were probably thinking that maybe now it's turning a little more northward, and that may not be necessary after all, but that's irrelevant at this stage of the game. Right now, there's a very large hurricane out there, and a very large portion of the coast is going to be affected by hurricane force winds in the next 12 hours. 6 to 12 hours.
How great an area do you expect?
Well, the hurricane force winds extend out 100 miles in the northeast and 50 in the southwest, so as much as 150 miles of the coastline.
Now, there'll be a lot of people getting up this morning and walking out and not saying conditions really too bad right now. How quickly will that deteriorate?
Well, we're starting to see some of the rain bands come in, and I would say within the next 3 to 5 hours we should see a major change.
Let's take a look at the satellite picture, and you can see the breadth of the storm easily on this picture. It extends well to the north and to the south.
Yeah, you can see the coastline there, and here's the edge of the stronger winds right there. And when that edge reaches the beach, which is another probably 2 to 4 hours, more like 2 or 3, you're going to see the winds increase rather dramatically.
Now, the official forecast track takes the center of circulation crossing the coast just south of Wilmington at about 2 o'clock this afternoon. But it looks to you like this may be a little quicker and a little further to the east, perhaps?
Yeah, I think in this particular case, the timing is really irrelevant. Just be patient, wait for it to pass. And the other important thing, of course, is the exact position of landfall is not critical at this time. It's a very big hurricane, and anything to the east of it is going to be harder hit than to the west. But large swell will be impacting the coast now until all afternoon.
Okay, let's take a look at the wind profile and just a couple of other items here. First off, the hurricane force winds just off the coast now, and probably will be felt in the next 4 to 5 hours. The storm surge could affect as far north as the southern Chesapeake Bay area, and tornado watches have just been announced by the National Weather Service, which is always the case in a situation of a landfalling hurricane. When would those be likely to occur?
Usually the tornado is most likely to occur at and just before landfall. So between now and midday is the most likely time for tornadoes over the land.
All right, Dr. Lyons, thank you very much. Stay posted here at the Weather Channel. We'll keep you advised all morning long. Meanwhile, if you can't get to us on your TV, check it out on the computer at weather.com. Take you back to the studio now with Bruce Edwards.
Thanks very much, Marshall. We remind you that Weather Center is sponsored by Lowe's Home Improvement Centers. Well, the pre-dawn hours are stormy ones in the Northeast as well. New York, Boston, and Philadelphia are seeing thunderstorms with some locally heavy rain. The water vapor imagery does show dry air coming towards the Ohio Valley and western New York, but you see the milky white clouds over the northeast quarter, and that's where you are seeing some stormy weather for you this morning. Out ahead of the front, some showers and storms advancing through the northeast right now. As a matter of fact, as we look at the regional radar, some lighter rains up into northern Maine, but you can see once again your commute from Boston, Hartford, Providence, New York City, northern Jersey, even down into Philly. And Allentown going to be a wet one. The I-95 corridor is wet, and at times very heavy rains. And as you get into Boston, Providence, moderate showers now down towards Hartford. Some heavier rains, though, as you get into the Hudson Valley here and up into the northern parts of Jersey, and then head over towards Allentown and down to Philly. It is wet here. So once again, be prepared for some slow travel, so you might want to leave a few minutes early for you this morning. The numbers here in the Northeast are mild, 73 in Boston and New York, 80 in Philly right now. We cool back to 57 in Saginaw, Michigan. The south is warm, as you might expect, although Birmingham's dropped to 69, very comfortable there. High pressure over the...
This edition of Storm Watch is sponsored by Rayovac. Of course, the tropics are extremely active this morning as we have 3 hurricanes to tell you about. At the same time, though, stateside we've had some heavier showers and thunderstorms that will continue to pop throughout the afternoon, and we'll say more about that coming up in a moment. But right now, let's check out the tropical update. And first of all, as we go to our weather maps for today, it's going to be definitely a very, very active and a very stormy weather pattern for the Carolinas. We are keeping very close tabs on Hurricane Bonnie as it continues to spin and churn off the southeastern coast. Now, this is a very large and a very formidable and a very powerful hurricane. It's a Category 3 hurricane. You can see it spinning off the coast. Still lots of deep convection, a very well-organized hurricane, and it will certainly pack quite a wallop. Here's the latest information that we have on Hurricane Bonnie as of the 5 o'clock advisory. Still a Category 3 hurricane, still packing winds of 115 miles an hour. Right now centered 130 miles south of Wilmington, North Carolina, and it's lifting off towards the north-northwest, some 14 miles an hour. Now earlier it was moving off in a northwesterly fashion, so it is now starting that little northerly turn, and we'll likely continue to see that movement taking place for the remainder of the day, perhaps maybe turning a little bit more so even to the north. But generally that is the same track that it should be taking for the next several hours or so. And at that rate, it could very well make landfall somewhere near Wilmington later this afternoon, or at least that's what the official forecast track takes it, very close to around the Wilmington area. Should be making landfall later today somewhere across the southeastern coastline of North Carolina. So with that in mind, we have hurricane warnings in effect from Edisto Beach, South Carolina, extending northward all the way over towards Chincoteague Beach in Virginia. Now, especially within this warning area, that's where the weather will definitely be really rough and very squally for today. Very strong hurricane force winds will likely be experienced right around this general area today. So a very, very stormy, very tumultuous conditions here. Now we're seeing that this is a very large hurricane, as we were mentioning, and in fact hurricane force winds extend out over 145 miles from the center of circulation, and the tropical storm force winds extend out over 200 miles from the center. So again, a massive hurricane. Its effects will be felt for quite a ways away from the center of circulation. Now the highest strike probability, or where we think the greatest risk is for making landfall, will be right here in North Carolina, especially across the southeastern shoreline. That is the highest strike probability. And as we were mentioning before, quite a bit of wind profile with this particular hurricane. Tropical storm force winds extending out over 200 miles from the eye of the hurricane, and then the hurricane force winds themselves, though, extending out over 145 miles from the eye. So a very massive system, as you can see, and much of the Carolina coastline will start to feel the effects of Hurricane Bonnie. Now at this point, too, we are seeing some dangerously high seas and big swells and some big seas crashing along the coastline, and that makes for a very dangerous situation. Certainly boating and fishing is not really being recommended, and definitely not any swimming today, because you'll have some dangerous riptides continuing along the eastern seaboard. Now at this point, too, heavy surf advisories out for parts of the eastern seaboard. That will be continuing through the afternoon and tonight. And again, there's another vantage point of Hurricane Bonnie spinning off the Carolina shoreline. Now, besides Hurricane Bonnie, though, we have a couple more hurricanes. We have Hurricane Danielle farther out into the Atlantic. Right now, the latest information, winds over 100 miles an hour. This one, too, moving off towards the west-northwest. Stay tuned. We'll have further updates regarding Hurricane Bonnie and your local weather, too, coming up in a moment.
Residents brace for Bonnie as hurricane conditions pound the Carolina coast. When and where it could strike next on Weather Center after your local forecast.
This program was sponsored by Rayovac Rechargeable Alkaline.
Batteries.
Video games don't just blast through your batteries, they blast through your money. That's why you should arm yours with Rayovac Maximum Alkaline. They pack long-lasting